Shalom everybody, my name is Adam Yitzhak and we're going to be learning Matan Torah by the Baal HaSulam. For those who are unfamiliar, the Baal HaSulam was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, spiritual master in the 20th century. I say that because even the greatest of that generation deferred to him for questions regarding the deepest ideas of the Torah and Judaism. For example, Rav Kook said something to the extent of, "And now has come the godly sage, master of understandings, the holy treasure, the honorable sage in awesome holiness, our rabbi and teacher, Rabbi Yehuda Leib Ashlag, Gevat Shaul." And he has more to say, but as well as the Musar masters of that generation, being Rav Dessler, Rav Lopian, the Chazon Ish was close with the Baal HaSulam, and even baked matzahs in his oven before Pesach. The Beit Yisrael, the Rebbe of Ger, and the list goes on. The Baal HaSulam is Rabbi Yehuda Leib Halevi Ashlag. He came from Poland, from different schools of Chassidut, particularly of the Porozhov descent. And he was a great student of several Chassidic rabbis. He is named after his magnum opus, which is the Sulam. It's a commentary on the Zohar, which is a translation as well from Aramaic into Hebrew, as well as an illumination of most of the deep teachings within. He also wrote an extensive commentary and reorganization of the Arizal's Eitz Chaim, as he saw that the work had great disorganization and there was a great need to both organize it and commentate to illuminate those ideas. But in the early 1930s, when he was already living in Israel for a little bit over 10 years at the time, after he had immigrated with his family from Poland, there was waves of consciousness within him that pushed him to write a collection of essays to combat the growing corruption of authors who claim to know something about Judaism and deep wisdom. And he also wanted to inspire both the religious Jew who did not have a connection to the deep side of the Torah, being the Kabbalah and the inner dimensions, and as well as the non-religious Jew who might not have had any connection to it as well, and perhaps that's why they are expressing their discontent with the culture when really it bears such sweet fruit. So Matan Torah was a collection of essays that were planned to be disseminated throughout Israel in a pamphlet, and for several reasons it didn't make particular circulation in Israel. But after the Baal HaSulam passed away, some years later, it was compiled into a work that we know today as Matan Torah. We're going to be reading from the English translation called Giving, the Essential Teaching of the Kabbalah. And it has commentary from Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, who is the current Ashlag Admor of Telstone. After the Baal HaSulam passed away, his students chose his first son to be his successor, as they understood that he was his closest student and someone who attached himself to the Baal HaSulam the most. So 18 days after the Baal HaSulam passed away, they wrote a special document and said, "You are our new sage, our new teacher." And something similar happened to Rabbi Gottlieb when, I'll call him the Rebbe Zitzak, was Rabbi Baruch Sholem Ashlag, the first son of Baal HaSulam, passed away. Throughout the class, I'll be referring to Rabbi Gottlieb as the Rabbi Shlita. I don't claim to be an expert in this field whatsoever, nor do I think I'm really teaching anything. I'm really reading from a book and sharing some ideas. I'm really learning with you. And I'm learning with you under the principle of, if you know the Aleph base, then teach the Aleph base. If you know Aleph, teach Aleph. And I know a little bit of Aleph. So on that principle, I'll share what I know, because I think it's so deep and so important. All the more so in these auspicious times in this generation. The essence of Matan Torah is speaking about the main principle of Judaism, which is coming to the state of loving the other. So, let's start. Oh, and also the translator of this work, who has done a masterful job, his name is Arya Siegel, and I have great gratitude to him for such a translation, as this book has been very dear to me and I highly recommend it. You can find it online in most retail bookstores, or at least their websites from what I've seen, Amazon for sure. Please grab a copy, it'll do you good. So the preface to this essay is a quote from Vayikra, or Leviticus 19:18. And love your fellow as yourself. And it says, Rabbi Akiva says, this is a great general principle of the Torah, from Midrash Rabbah, Bereshis, or Genesis, chapter 24. So 3 bullet points before we actually get into the text is 1, love the other as yourself. 2, this is all of the Torah. And 3, how does this principle include mitzvot regarding our relationship with God? The Baal HaSulam begins. This statement of our sages cries out for explanation, for the expression general principle in Hebrew klal implies a number of particulars that come together to make up the general principle. The Rabbi Shlita comments on this and says, the Hebrew word klal is ambiguous. It can mean a principle, or it can refer to the entirety of something. For example, the expression klal Yisrael refers to all the people of Israel. I believe this is a planting seed for whether or not this mitzvah in the Torah of loving your neighbor as yourself is a good thing to do. It's like a principle, or if it's the all-encompassing principle. But we'll get into it further. So as I'll be reading, it cuts into sections from the Baal HaSulam's text, and then the Rabbi Shlita's commentary on the text. So I'll be jumping back and forth, and I'll preface each thing with when I'm jumping back and forth. So we're jumping back into the Baal HaSulam. Thus, when Rabbi Akiva says that the commandment of "and love your fellow as yourself" is a great principle of the Torah, what he means is that the remaining 612 mitzvot of the Torah, together with all its verses, are no more than, nor any less than, the Torah, together that are with all its verses, assimilated are no more than, single commandment, nor any less than, and love your Torah, together that are with all its verses, assimilated are no more than. Let's read that again real quick. Thus, when Rabbi Akiva says that the commandment of "and love your fellow as yourself" is a great principle of the Torah, what he means is that the remaining 612 mitzvot of the Torah, together with all its verses, are no more than, and no less than, all of the particulars that are included and assimilated within the single commandment of "and love your fellow as yourself." The Rabbi Shlita says the single goal of all of the Torah is to develop in us the character of loving the other. This includes the mitzvah to love the other as yourself, and the other 612 mitzvot as well, and even all the verses in the Torah that contain stories which are not connected to the performing of mitzvot. In essence, the entirety of the Torah is constantly talking about and is under the umbrella of loving your neighbor as yourself. I had a thought on that. In Hebrew, we have a corresponding numeric value to every letter. So there's a gematria. And the gematria of echad and ahava are the same. There are 13. And we say God is one, Hashem echad. But because everything is so interrelated in the Torah, let alone reality, so because Hashem is the absolute, ultimate, perfect love and lover, as the principle of creation based on the knowledge of Kabbalah, is that the foundation is Ratzono Lativ Lenivrav, his intention to give goodness to his creation. So there's only a pleasant stream of goodness at all times. When we see chaos and darkness and suffering, it's due to our lacking and our inability to see the light in the darkness, or maybe perhaps a lack in our ability to rise above our own understanding and say, this is for the best. It's actually Jewish law, it's halacha, that says because everything comes from the Creator, it is incumbent on us to believe that everything is for the good. But because Echad and Hava are both 13, thus they're interrelated, the Holy Zohar tells us that every single word in the Torah are Hashem's names, are God's names. Because God's name is a vessel for his experience, for his light. Because God's essence, so to speak, is completely beyond and incomprehensible and attainable. But we interact with his attributes, which we have within ourselves, because we are made in the image of God. So if the entire Torah are names of Hashem, and Hashem is this all-encompassing love, and Hashem Echad, and Hashem and the Torah and Klal Yisrael are one, I'm just planting the seed for us to meditate on this idea, then it would make sense that the entire Torah is talking about loving your fellow as yourself, because the entire Torah is an enclothement, a garb of Hashem, and everything is one, and everything is love. It's something to meditate on, just a thought. So the Baal HaSulam continues. This is surely a surprising statement, because although it might be justified in the case of those mitzvot regarding interpersonal relationships, how can the commandment of, and love your fellow as yourself, include and support within it all the mitzvot between people and God, which are the essential principles of the Torah and the majority of its makeup? It's a good question. Let's read that again. This is surely a surprising statement regarding how everything in the Torah is under the umbrella of this one all-encompassing mitzvah. Because, although it might be justified in the case of those mitzvot regarding interpersonal relations, how can the commandment of, and love your fellow as yourself, include and support within it all the mitzvot between people and God, which are the essential principles of the Torah and the majority of its makeup? The Rabbi Shlita says, it makes sense that the interpersonal mitzvot, with all their particulars, such as do not avenge, do not bear a grudge, do not disregard a lost object that can be returned, do not steal, etc., all weave together one common thread. That common thread is the training to acquire a different nature. The nature to be considerate of the other and to truly acknowledge his or her existence. These interpersonal mitzvot create the desire to give selflessly to the other. In plain language, they create love of the other, where loving implies perceiving in the most exaggerated manner the virtues and the significance of the other person. Just as we have high regard for our own significance, so we must recognize that each individual is a completely unique and valuable treasure. But how are the mitzvot between people and God, such as phylacteries, being tefillin, Shabbat, sacrifices, blowing the shofar, connected to this transforming education that we are expected to undergo? It's a very good question. And it's interesting because when we were given the 10 commandments, the 10 sayings, it's split in half. You have Bein Adam Lachavero, man and his friend, and Bein Adam Lamakom, between man and God. And through our tradition, it's understood that the Creator actually emphasizes and tells us that the mitzvah between man and man is more important. Why? When I pray, or I do something for God, let's say put on the tefillin, or keep the Sabbath, I'm not getting feedback. But when I do something for a friend, for a loved one, or an enemy for that matter, I get feedback. So because it's more tangible and it's more relatable to our growth, therefore it's given more importance, because it's more practical in relation to our ascension up the spiritual ladder. Also, under the notion that we are all one soul and we're all interconnected, therefore every human being is a valuable treasure, as the Rabbi Shlita says here. Because their soul is a part of God on high, so to speak, a chip off the old mountain, as we like to say, then when we do something for the other, not only are we doing it for the person, but if we do it with the intention that we're serving God through serving the person, then it's a 2-in-1. Because God is within that person to a degree, a chelik, a portion, so to speak, and the person himself or herself. But I'd like to expound a little bit on the notion of mitzvos as a whole and how they relate to our growth. Because the question is here, how can the mitzvot between people and God relate to our growth? How can it relate to the transformation within us? So, the Baal HaSulam has a book called the Peticha L'Chochmat Kabbalah. The Peticha is a masterful summary of the Talmud Esrei Sfirot, which is a super commentary on the Arizal's Eitz Chaim, as described. The Peticha, as we say in Hebrew, is a bekitzer. It's a short version. It's condensed, and it's, as it says, Peticha means opening. It's an opening to the wisdom. And the English translation, actually, for the first 2 chapters of the book, are in print, but it can be found for free PDF download on KabbalahArt.com. It's an amazing artist in Sfat, good friend of mine, Avraham Lowenthal, and he's done several translations for some of these books, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's a free download for PDF, so why not? And I also like to note that the Rav Kook quote that I read was from another masterful work called Master of the Ladder. It's by the Rabbi Shlita, Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb, and it was translated by Yedida Cohen from Tzfat. And it's an amazing, amazing work that has both stories about his life, poetry, personal notes that he sent to students with commentary on the deep Kabbalistic wisdom behind it, and just deep Kabbalistic teachings, period, just without saying anything else. Like it's a deep book in itself, and it's highly recommended. But I digress. It says in the Peticha, again, we're talking about the mitzvot between people and God. The Peticha opens up. Rabbi Hanania ben Akasha says, God wanted to give merit to Israel, and therefore gave them a lot of Torah and mitzvot, spiritual learning and spiritual practice. This is like what the sages say. The mitzvot were given to purify Israel. We need to understand this purification that we attain through Torah and mitzvot, and understand what coarseness in ourselves we need to refine. The Hebrew says zechut, that God wanted to give merit to Israel. Rotzeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu zechut et Yisrael lefichach harbe lahem Torah v'mitzvot. Zechut is, as it says here in the Peticha in the Hebrew, is meloshin chizdochachut, which means to refine. Hebrew roots also between words have a very deep interconnectedness. So Hashem wanted to give merit to Israel, and it just so happens that the merit actually translates also to purification, because it so happens, my 2 cents is that the greatest merit that we can ask for is to be refined. We want some type of reward, we want Olam Haba points, we want something in this world. What more could we ask for than to be refined? But it asks, what are we being refined from? It's an understanding that our initial nature is out of self-concern. It's egoistic. It's the will to receive for oneself alone. The higher nature, the higher state of consciousness that we're aiming for, as we've spoken about in the beginning of Matan Torah, is loving the other. It's loving, it's giving, it's being compassionate, it's rising above the ego. So the Torah, as we're taught, was given to us in order to refine us. And that's the greatest merit, because the more refined we are, and the more we rise above our initial nature to become more giving, then we become similar and characteristic to the Creator, who is only giving, because He's perfect. He has no lack. He can't receive. God forbid that He should receive. It's understood, it's supposed to be beyond our understanding, that He does receive nachat ruach from our actions. I like to use the example of a parent receiving a macaroni picture from their kid. You don't need the macaroni picture. It's not fulfilling a lack. You weren't lacking a macaroni picture, but it's cute, like you're proud of your child for providing you with such a thing and thinking of you. So too, the Creator has given us lots of opportunities with the mitzvot to achieve this. I've heard the Rabbi Shlita say also, when he was a child in Israel, he'd go to the market, the store. There was one cheese. You go today and there's dozens, if not hundreds of cheeses. That's just cheese, let alone fruits and vegetables and all the myriad of tastes and flavors that we can consume in this lifetime. Wouldn't you expect all the more so spiritually that every single mitzvah has its own flavor? It just so happens that we have to refine ourselves in order to taste it. And that taste happens to be by great, massive amounts of literature telling us the great sweetness behind it. It does take a sense of faith to be able to understand that such a thing is possible, but to know that the things that we can achieve and experience through the mitzvot that refines us are also very sweet and very beneficial for both us and humanity. I've also heard the Rebbe say that we are given understanding in order to go above our understanding. Why? Our understanding is intrinsically a part of us. Our understanding, our logic, our reason, it's good, it can be great, it can do us very well. But we are naturally flawed in the sense that we're still working on ourselves. Our essence is pure and untouchable because it's our soul, it's a part of God Himself, so to speak. But in the meantime, as we're working on ourselves, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to accomplish. There's a lot to grow. So our reason, our logic, is flawed. And it's a bitter thing to understand. But when we're asked to do a mitzvah that we understand we're given to 3 million people 3,300 years ago, and it's brought down in an unbroken tradition to today, and is understood as the ultimate way, given it's a divine document to refine ourselves, so too, sometimes it takes going beyond our understanding and saying, let me try, let me investigate, because my understanding and my logic can only go so far. Okay, I think this is a good place to end for today. It's a good start to our learning together. The next class will be about Hillel the Elder, also talking about this notion that loving the other is the entirety of the Torah. And we get into some very deep ideas regarding our goals and our essence and how to get to this amazing place of loving the other. More importantly, it's talking about an illumination of the Torah that I really wish everyone knew. And I'll keep it at that for now. Looking forward. And by the way, this is a piano scarf. It's very sentimental. It's given to me by my mother. She's a pianist. She taught me young. Kol Tuv, all the best. A Chodesh Tov, a good month. A Shavua Tov, a good week. And looking forward to learning more. All the best.